These are letters from children describing what it feels like and what it does to them when the government locks them up. This is Ariana. She's 14 years old, detained for 45 days. Since I got to this center, all I feel is sadness and mostly depression. This is Mia, 7 years old. I don't want to be in this place. I want to go to my school. This is Scarlett, 17 years old. I feel very bored and overwhelmed because I am locked up. This is Gabby, 14 years old. I feel so much sadness and depression of not being able to leave. This is Maria, 9 years old. Me and Dilley am not happy. Please get me out of here. This is a 12-year-old. Going to the doctor, and the only thing they tell me is drink more water. The water here is what makes people sick. And this one got me, Mr. Lyons, because this is a 5-year-old. Luis Annie. My son's 5. He can't write many words, but he can communicate through drawings like this. This is a picture of Luis Annie's family. And you might be able to see that none of the faces are smiling.
I would like to, Mr. Lyons, I wanted to just follow up on a statement that you just made, which is that if you're here legally and lawfully, you should not worry. I think the problem is there are many, many immigrants that are here legally and lawfully that are very worried because they have been snatched off the streets. They have had their face beat in by ICE agents. They've been yanked out of their car. They've been driven around and harassed. And so that is, I think, at the end of the day, you know, the key nut of the crux here, which is that unfortunately, there is not just this focus on criminals and that people who are here in legal status. And for example, I have an example of this that I'd like to highlight for you. Back in October, Maher Tarabishi, a North Texas resident who was allowed to be in this country legally and was under a supervision order to check in on an annual basis since 2008. And did that because he had an adult disabled son. And so he was here working as an IT consultant and was here in the legal process to take care of his adult legal son. He went to check into his appointment. It so happened to be at the time that the Dallas ICE office was closed due to the shooting. And so he was not able to check in. When he went back to check in, he was immediately snatched up and detained because he missed his appointment. That was unavoidable because the office was closed. He told everyone here was he in legal status. He had been here since 2008. And he had an adult disabled son that would likely pass away if he was not released. He was not released. His son died. And then to complicate it, he was not allowed to go and attend the funeral. And he's still in detention in the Bluebonnet facility in Texas. He is not a criminal. He has no criminal history. He was here legally. That is an unacceptable outcome. And I would like to know if you are willing to review his case and help us get his release, because he should not be in the Bluebonnet detention facility under these facts.
Yes, ma'am. I'm committed to reviewing that case for you.
I appreciate that. The other issue that I am really very concerned about is these warrantless entries into people's homes. It is a problem that is of epic proportion. There was just recently, yesterday, circulation, a Latino family, ICE just broke into their home without a warrant. And there was an example where they arrested a man in his pajamas who had every right to be here as a US citizen, but wrongfully snatched out in the freezing cold without a warrant to do so. The problem that we're having, nobody wants to see attacks on ICE agents, sir. But this is something I have brought up in this committee time and time again, which is, unfortunately, under your leadership and under Secretary Noem's leadership, this rogue brutality that ICE agents are inflicting upon the people of this country is not being reined in. It's not being, the agents who are abusing their power are not being held accountable. I'm sure that there are many, many fine agents who are doing everything they can to exercise their duty lawfully. But the problem is there are agents who are not. And the power that they have has gone to their head, and they use that power unconstitutionally, in violation of many people's direct constitutional rights. And what you're seeing in this country is the fact that your agency, it's not stopping. And rather than saying, yes, we're gonna take steps to keep these people who are abusing their power and who are terrorizing citizens of this country wrongfully, that we're going to hold them accountable, rather than well, that's what we want to see. You're doubling down on that we're only going after criminals, which is in your own comments. You said that you had 397, I think that's right, 379,000 arrests, but only 8,700 of them were suspected gang members or known suspected terrorists. That's 2%. And the problem is we can't terrorize 98% of the people in this country that have been wrongfully detained for 2%. That's not how the system works, and that is not okay. And so we have to do a better job. And so what procedures are you putting in place to hold agents accountable who clearly have a hot trigger and who clearly abuse their authority because someone has a phone and a whistle?
Ma'am, ICE does have the Office of Professional Responsibility. It's a robust internal investigation agency that does investigate allegations of special agent or deportation officer misconduct, and we do take everyone seriously, and we do investigate those.
Well, those are not being publicly reported, and so that's where there's a huge breach of the public trust, because there does not appear to be any accountability, sir. Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate all of our testifiers being here today. Before I begin, I would like to thank all of our members of law enforcement across the country who work every day to keep our communities safe, and also to their families that sacrifice. We know that it's a challenging job, and the environment is made particularly challenging by those who want to oppose our law enforcement from carrying out their lawful duties to keep everybody in our country and our communities safe. As was discussed earlier, there are a couple areas though where I think it's appropriate to discuss potential reforms and the way that we can improve our government operations. DHS guidance indicates that ICE does not arrest or detain U.S. citizens. On the other hand, social media is full of reports and accusations that this is occurring. As you know, any accusation that an American citizen's rights are violated is very serious. Can you clarify, Mr. Lyons, whether this is something that it occurs, and what are the circumstances where a U.S. citizen might be detained, and what steps does ICE take to prevent mistakes?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the question. Well, unfortunately, there's a misnomer that ICE is just a civil enforcement agency, and that's completely wrong. ICE enforces over 400 criminal statutes as well. Special agents, especially with the Homeland Security investigations, they're consistently out there doing human trafficking cases, drug cases, terrorism cases, and we do encounter U.S. citizens, and those who do commit federal crimes are arrested. But under Title VIII, no U.S. citizen is subject to civil immigration enforcement, and that just doesn't happen. There are multiple safeguards in that way, and if a U.S. citizen is detained in the course of an immigration investigation, they're quickly released. We don't take action on American citizens.
If it does occur where a U.S. citizen is detained during the course of another investigation, how is that documented and conveyed to the public about the fact that this did occur and what the circumstances around that were?
So, sir, if you say it's a separate investigation, if it comes to a criminal case, obviously a lot of those are under seal or ongoing investigations. We won't expose that. But we're transparent in the case when it comes to any U.S. citizens that's detained in any law enforcement operations that's subsequently arrested.
I appreciate that. I think greater transparency could be beneficial for both the American public and everybody involved here if we clearly articulate what occurred in many of these instances. I've seen it myself when I'm looking into local issues in our community. There are oftentimes two sides to the story, and when it is actually conveyed what did occur and why it occurred, there's a greater understanding in our local community of the law enforcement activities that occurred. The second thing I would like to hit on is jurisdictions, which are sometimes referred to sanctuary cities. Not a clear definition, as we all know, but local authorities in our community. We have Northampton County, which does not honor ICE detainer requests for 48 hours and properly convey to ICE and law enforcement about the release of that individual, when that may occur, or even during that detainer period, allow ICE to come onto their property to make an arrest in a secure facility. Obviously, that leaves our community in a vulnerable position. In our case, Members of Tren de Aragua, domestic abusers, have been released onto the street, and ICE had to stake out that location, making the arrests in an unsecure way out in the local community. From your perspective, how does this dynamic affect public safety and day-to-day operations, and where or how can we change and improve the coordination between ICE and state and local partners?
Thank you, sir, again. And what I would say is just very basic communication would go a long way for public safety. You know, ICE respects and abides by state and municipality laws as well, where sometimes you can't hold for any reasons. But a simple phone call to let us know that that individual is going to be released, or if that individual is released, sharing that biographical data with us will go a long way. Because the last thing we want is a criminal illegal alien to go back into the community, and more often than not, they prey upon other migrants who are coming here for a better life, yet that they can hide in plain sight because these sanctuary jurisdictions won't just pick up a phone, notify ICE that they're being re-released.
Well, I appreciate that. I think we want full cooperation between our local law enforcement and federal agents when they are trying to do their job. If somebody is on a detainer, they should be allowed onto that property, given the ability within that detainer window to make a lawful arrest. I think it would go a long way to keeping our community safe. I would like to thank all of you again for being here. The fact that you are here and present for this kind of testimony, I think, brings greater accountability and increases the ability for us to make reforms in Congress. Thank you again.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Poe, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our ranking member, Thompson. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for being here. Let me just be clear. Secretary Noem must step down or be impeached by the House, period. The lawlessness, the cruelty, the outright viciousness that she has created has destroyed an agency whose very mission is to protect our country. Under Noem's leadership, congressional oversight is ignored, detention visits are blocked, due process is ignored, and laws are broken without thought. This is the first time any of you have testified before our committee. It took 2 American citizens being murdered in cold blood to get you to show up. ICE raids schools, churches, and hospitals. And let's not forget 5-year-old Liam Ramos. You used him as a bait and then detained him despite his father legally seeking asylum. Liam is the face of your cruelty. My district is one of the most ethnically diverse in America. Our diversity is our strength, but somehow you all seem to believe it's a weakness. Last fall, the Supreme Court greenlit ICE's ability to yank people off the street based on one thing, such as, quote, the type of work one does, speaking Spanish or speaking with an accent, and their apparent race or ethnicity. Mr. Lyons, I speak Spanish. If I wasn't wearing my member pin, would me being a Latina or speaking Spanish be enough for ICE agents to harass me or shove me into one of your unmarked cars?
No, ma'am.
I speak for all of us when I say that I think we know the real answer to this. These are the realities traumatizing my constituents. We know that ICE is transferring New Jersey detainees to other states like Texas, ripping them from their families and leaving them unable to challenge their detention. Mr. ICE, yes or no? I'm sorry, Mr. Lyons. Yes or no? Will you provide us with a list of people ICE has transferred from New Jersey to other states so that I can inform their families where they are?
Yes, ma'am.
These are people like my constituent, Lee Cordilla, whose ICE shipped to Texas and continues to detain despite 2 judicial orders compelling her release. Over the weekend, Lee Cow was hospitalized for 72 hours while her family had no idea where she was at, nor the status of her condition. Mr. Lyons, would you be willing to look into this to make sure to release my constituent? Why have we failed? Why have you failed to inform her family where she was sent and the status of her condition? When will she be freed?
Yes, ma'am, you have my commitment that I'll look into that.
Thank you. Now soon, Mr. Lyons and all of you, my district will host the World Cup matches and hundreds of thousands of visitors will come. Visitors' confidence is plummeting and jeopardizing the World Cup. Mr. Lyon, will you commit to ensure that pausing its operations and raise at FIFA matches and other FIFA-sanctioned public events?
Ma'am, ICE, specifically Homeland Security Investigations, is a key part of the overall security apparatus for the World Cup. We're dedicated to securing that operation, and we're dedicated to the security of all our participants as well as visitors.
You realize that if they feel that they're going to be wrongfully incarcerated or wrongfully pulled out, that's going to hurt this entire process. I hope you realize that.
Yes, ma'am, and ICE is dedicated to ensuring that everyone that visits the facilities will have a safe and secure event.
Without these assurances, our local communities and national reputations will indeed be suffered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Knott, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Using the trope, diversity is our strength, as an excuse for lawlessness is unbelievably naive and dangerous. Nobody in this room would say that diversity is a bad thing. Lawlessness is a bad thing. Law and order is much more of our strength than open border policies that welcomes anybody with no vetting. And when you get down to the nuts and bolts of this issue, we would not be having this hearing if the Democrats attacked illegal immigration with the same vigor that they're attacking law enforcement and the men at this table. That's a fact. And it's worth noting that the dishonesty in framing these issues has been unbelievably obvious, it's been consistent, and just as an anecdote, Mr. Lyons, was Liam used as bait by your agency?
No, sir. Actually, law enforcement officers took care of the child after the father abandoned him at a...
Walk us through what that means.
So, sir, the individual that was driving that vehicle with Liam was in fled from the scene from the officers. He was obviously upset. We comforted him. The officers actually placed him in one of our vehicles, played his favorite song, favorite music. Then they took him to McDonald's.
You all got him McDonald's. So you all did not abduct him. You did not use him as bait. Any characterization of that is a lie. And it has been repeated over and over by the Democrats to frame your agency. You know, it's worth noting again that the Democrats fought to prevent any vetting of 20 million illegal immigrants into this country over the last 4 years. They attack agents rather than those who are assaulting agents today. They continually misframe what's happening in the ground. They continually malign the law enforcement officers who are providing legal structure to otherwise lawless landscapes in this country. And it's worth noting that there have been roughly 2 million people in the country who have been removed in the last year, some voluntarily, and then some by forced deportations. We've heard roughly about 25 cases of alleged abuse. Some of them, as I just pointed out, are dishonestly framed. But let's do a favor to the Democratic side. Let's increase that number by 1,000 times. 25,000 cases of alleged abuse or improper protocols. We are still operating at roughly 99% proficiency. Given the scale of the problem, the scale of the solution that you all are operating under, your agents are doing a remarkable job, and I thank you. But one issue that I want to talk about is this idea of sanctuary policies. Sanctuary policies is not just a passive relinquishing effort. It's an active obstruction. Isn't that true, Mr. Lyons?
Yes, sir.
And what I mean by that is, when I say it's an active, to be specific, there are sanctuary states and cities that will release violent criminals rather than handing them over to pursuing federal law enforcement. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, sir.
I left the hearing a few moments ago just to find a quick example. Here's one right behind me. Just 30 hours ago, an illegal alien arrested for stabbing an American in the back. He was charged with attempted murder. He pled to a lesser offense. The feds wanted him, sought a detainer, and then rather than hold him for your agent's pickup, he was released back into the streets of Maryland. That is not an unusual action from local, hostile law enforcement, is it, Mr. Lyons?
No, sir, that's what we face every day.
So we've heard the Democrats complain that we're not getting the worst of the worst, but their sanctuary jurisdictions that control roughly 40% of this country's population will actively release sex predators, drug dealers, violent offenders, rather than hand them over to you for deportation. And these are people who are already in custody. Am I correct, Mr. Lyons?
Yes, sir, the individuals were already deemed a public safety threat by local or state law enforcement.
And then when they get a federal detainer, they will release them on the street rather than turn them over for deportation.
Yes, sir.
It's disgusting. Mr. Scott, I want to talk to you briefly. I'm running out of time. How many cities does your agency operate in?
We operate nationwide.
Why is it that there is so much tension in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now?
Because paid agitators are actively trying to stop law enforcement action. Without that, you wouldn't even have any idea most of these arrests were taking place.
In many parts of the country, local law enforcement assists your efforts to bring legal structure to these lawless areas. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And when order is maintained, you can do your job peacefully, correct?
Correct. And all we've ever asked is for law enforcement to do their job, not necessarily.
In Minneapolis, St. Paul, local law enforcement in some cases have been prohibited from maintaining order so you can do your job. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Gentleman's time is
I yield back.
expired.
Thank you.
I now recognize a gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Walkinshaw, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Lyons, your opening statement referenced the importance of protecting children, and I'm glad to hear your commitment to that. I want to focus on one of President Trump's mass deportation policies that the experts say harms children: child detention. In this administration, under your watch, ICE has booked nearly 4,000 children, and 1,000 of them have been held longer than the court-ordered 20-day limit. Recently, ProPublica obtained handwritten letters and drawings from children detained by ICE. These are letters from children describing what it feels like and what it does to them when the government locks them up. This is Ariana. She's 14 years old, detained for 45 days. Since I got to this center, all I feel is sadness and mostly depression. This is Mia, 7 years old. I don't want to be in this place. I want to go to my school. This is Scarlett, 17 years old. I feel very bored and overwhelmed because I am locked up. This is Gabby, 14 years old. I feel so much sadness and depression of not being able to leave. This is Maria, 9 years old. Me in Dilley, am not happy. Please get me out of here. This is a 12-year-old going to the doctor, and the only thing they tell me is drink more water. The water here is what makes people sick. And this one got me, Mr. Lyons, because this is a 5-year-old, Luis Annie. My son's 5. He can't write many words, but he can communicate through drawings like this. This is a picture of Luis Annie's family. And you might be able to see that none of the faces are smiling. Child detention is not required by law. You know that. It's not the only option available, and it's not effective. We know that community-based alternatives can ensure compliance with proceedings without traumatizing these children. Yet, you continue to detain and hold children for weeks or months, depriving them of school, stability, leaving them afraid, sick, and confused. And one of the key reasons for your mass detention including the detention of Liam and his father, is to pressure people to give up their legal opportunities and pathways to remaining in the United States. Liam's father was following the rules, following the legal process with a valid claim. Let me be clear. No child, not Liam Ramos, not Gabby, or any of these children should be used as pawns in Stephen Miller's sick and twisted Great Replacement agenda. Mr. Lyons, in 2025, the British Journal of Psychiatry analyzed all of the data on the impact of immigration detention on children's health. Have you read that study and analysis?
No, sir, I haven't.
You're the director of you are not familiar with that literature.
No, sir.
You could tell me, I'm sure, chapter and verse on the tactics and the equipment that your agents use, military-style equipment across the country in American cities, but you don't know anything about the literature of the impacts of your policies on children. You haven't read it.
No, sir.
The Flores agreement, I'm sure you know that, sets a 20-day limit on detaining children. You and the Trump administration are trying to terminate that agreement. How long would you like to hold children? 20 days, 40 days, 60 days, 100 days? What's the right number, Mr. Lyons?
So we wouldn't like to hold any children. We would like to remove that family unit together safely and humanely and as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Since you haven't read the literature, let me tell you what it says. Detention harms children. No period. No period. Not 20, 40, 75 days that you're holding children can be deemed safe. All detention of children has adverse impacts and is profoundly detrimental. Your policies are profoundly detrimental to children.